Okay, Mr. Chairman, I have 8 o'clock Central.
Okay. Let's go. All right, good morning, everybody. I'm Greg Weatherby with the U.S. Geological Survey in Denver. Thank you for joining us, and thanks to all of our presenters who submitted abstracts to this conference. We hold this conference every year. This is the 2020 NADP Scientific Symposium. For your attendance, enjoy the meeting, and we hope that we have a very informative and productive meeting. Here's what the schedule will look like for the kickoff. We'll hear from David Schmeltz, the NADP chair. We'll say a few words, and then we'll have some opening remarks from Dr. James Schauer, the NADP principal investigator. David Gay will provide the annual State of the NADP report to give everyone an update on where NADP is today. And then we'll be followed by our keynote speaker, Dr. Latoya Miles from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And without further ado, I want to introduce Dave Schmeltz. So I will stop sharing my screen and Dave can take over. And again, thanks everyone for attending.
Thanks, Greg. Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome you to NADP's annual scientific symposium. I'm David Schmeltz with US EPA's Office of Atmospheric Programs in Washington, DC, and the outgoing chair of the executive committee. And I want to thank the IT team in the program office and the Wisconsin State Lab for making this meeting possible. And thank you all for zooming in during this unusual time. In a normal year, we would be huddled in a large conference room, ready to share the latest and greatest science, maybe having a coffee, catching up with some old friends. Obviously, this year is different with the global pandemic, but despite the fact that most of us are working from home and physically distanced, if there is one silver lining, moving this year's symposium online has brought us together closer and has made NADP more accessible. It's really opened a door for people around the world who've never attended this meeting to join us here today. And we're very fortunate to have participation from over 300 people from more than 17 countries, including Brazil, Canada, China, Denmark, France, Germany, India, Italy, Japan, Mexico, Pakistan, Slovakia, South Africa, South Korea, Sweden, Switzerland, Taiwan, Thailand, and the US, of course. And I hope I got all the countries there, but this is a really impressive list, and we welcome you all. If I could just share my screen. You all see that?
You can see it.
Okay, so for those of you new to NADP, NADP is a long-term cooperative that's been monitoring precipitation chemistry in the US for more than 40 years. It's currently made up of 4 subnetworks: NTN, MDN, AMNET, and AMON. A 5th network, AIRMON, was unfortunately discontinued last year for budget reasons. NADP started in the 1970s, focused on monitoring acids, nutrients, base cations, and precipitation. Then it expanded in the 90s to monitor mercury in precip, and then atmospheric mercury species in 2009. Most recently in 2010, the program began monitoring atmospheric ammonia concentration.
Schmeltz.
You may have seen this map. This is from the annual data summary. It's probably one of the most compelling displays illustrating the value of NADP. As you can see, NADP is well established. It's a mature program made up of mostly long-term monitoring sites. In fact, more than 75% of the active NTN sites have been operating for at least 20 years, and a good portion of those, about 20%, have been running for more than 40 years. And similarly, about 80% of the active MDN sites have been operating for 10 years or more, and about 25% of those have been running for more than 20 years. And the other two active subnetworks started later, but also have significant number of sites operating continuously for more than 10 years. And these long-term sites are really important. Many are located in ecologically sensitive areas. And their data have been critical for characterizing spatial and temporal trends and assessing the benefits and effectiveness of programs to reduce emissions from power plants and other sources. And most of the long-term sites are co-located, including with other networks such as CastNet. So sites that have operations interrupted or shut down not only impact NADP, but also our network partners. After 40 years though, the good news so far is that even with flat and or shrinking monitoring budgets, a global pandemic, government shutdowns, hurricanes, floods, wildfires, and programmatic transition to a new host institution and new labs, NADP continues to be resilient and prosper. Yeah, we've lost sites over the year, but we've also grown through new partnerships, which have extended monitoring coverage into new regions, such as South America and Asia. And as a deployed infrastructure, NADP continues to be recognized as a platform to better understand emerging environmental concerns, such as PFAS and microplastics. And I want to thank the dedicated leadership and staff of the program office and labs in Wisconsin, the devoted site operators, and our diverse membership and advocates who continue to keep the trains running while also pursuing new opportunities for the program to evolve into the future. One of the traditions of NADP is to recognize the transition in NADP executive committee leadership by passing an old wooden gavel from the outgoing chair of the executive committee to the incoming chair. And I have here the 40-year-old gavel, which has been signed by all the previous chairs and passed to me by Doug Burns. And so at this time, in the spirit of this NADP tradition, I'd like to virtually pass the gavel to the new chair, Greg Weatherby, and turn the meeting over to him. I would send this to you in the mail, Greg, so off to you. You're on mute. Good catch. Floor is yours.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Yes, it's an honor to have this position, and I will do my best to move the organization forward with all of your help, of course. And so now, without any further ado, thank you for your presentation, David. I want to introduce Dr. James Schauer. He's the principal investigator of the NADP.
Thank you, Greg. First of all, I just wanted to welcome everyone to this year's annual meeting and symposium for NADP. Just as a quick introduction to myself, I'm a faculty member here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and also I'm the director of the State Lab of Hygiene. It's a great pleasure to see this participation in our virtual world we live in today. For those of you that I do know, I look forward to seeing you in the future. And for those of you I haven't met before, I hope that I can meet you in person at an upcoming meeting. I think, as everyone knows, it's been a somewhat of a crazy year, if I can use the word crazy, and a difficult year in terms of managing the pandemic. we here at the State Lab of Hygiene are on the front lines of actually testing for COVID-19. So I've been pretty preoccupied with that for the past 9 months, and it's a tremendous welcome to me to be able to participate in the symposium, to kind of step back to my real life from the pandemic. And I guess I would echo as what Dave Schmeltz said, that I think that it's an interesting world. I think it's in terms of the fact that we can still interact like as we are in this meeting. And I hope that's something that we can take forward with us and think about broader engagement, not just spatially around the world, but I'm sure there's people in here that couldn't participate in the meetings in the past, either because of logistical reasons or travel restrictions. And I think that there's a lot, if there's a silver lining, as Dave said, that we can walk away from this. Hopefully we can find ways that we can continue to advance our engagement with each other. I think, I think everyone has noticed the title of this year's symposium, NADP in a Changing World. I think when I first heard that, I never expected how much the world is changing. Not all for the good, but some for the good. And we're going to have to be resilient and deal with that. I think it's very clear over this year, our need for engagement with each other, the need for the activities that NADP is involved in, both more locally and also internationally and globally. There's a tremendous need for us engaging on things that NADP has been doing and NADP will continue to work on. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to connect. And I really hope for those of you who are joining us for the first time that we will continue to engage with you and see you in the future. I hope that someday all of you will come here to Madison and we'll give you a tour of the labs and visit the things that are going on at the NADP program office and laboratory. So with that, I just wanted to welcome everybody, and I look forward to the talks today to the degree that I could ignore COVID for a couple of days. So thank you again for joining us, and I'll turn it back over to Greg.
Thank you, Jamie. It's now my pleasure to introduce David Gay, the NADP coordinator, who will provide us with the State of NADP address and presentation. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Greg. Get set up here. There we go. Welcome everyone to the 2020 annual meeting of NADP and Scientific Symposium. My name is David Gay. I am the coordinator of the NADP, new coordinator of the NADP and somewhat old coordinator of the NADP, both at the same time, but it is tradition here at the NADP meeting to give a quick overview of how all the networks are operating, and that's what this presentation is. So the general conditions, and what else should we start with but COVID? We've gotten lots of questions at the program office of how we are functioning within the COVID environment. So real quickly, the program office and all the labs have been working right through this disease and lockdown. I don't know if we're officially essential employees, but we have not stopped working throughout the entire issue. At worst, about 13% of our sites have been non-operational in any given week. We were expecting the worst, but really it hasn't been that bad. We've gotten some data loss for sure, but not nearly what it could have been. We estimate right now that we missed about, over the last 6 or 7 months, we've missed about 580 samples of the 13,000 that we normally would have taken. So that's really about 5%, which is not too bad. I would say under these conditions, that's excellent. There are a few sites that are still not back up and operating, but I think that's only 2 or 3 at this point. So in all reality, we weathered this storm quite nicely, and I think a lot of that goes to the program office and to the dedication of the people in the Cal and the HAL laboratories from coming into work continuously. So we weathered the storm and we're in pretty good shape. Most of you know me, I think in money terms all the time. So I wanted to give you a quick overview of the financial notes. Financially, NADP is doing fine. We're within our budgets for all the networks for the most part. And with that, since COVID has occurred, there is no travel, and we've saved a tremendous amount of money by not holding this meeting live, although I don't like that option. So budgetarily, we're going to be just fine. We're doing some tests to see if we can change how AMON measurements occur, at least within the laboratory, so we can save money. And for those of you who know, we just moved the MDN operation, our mercury wet deposition operation, to the state lab here in Wisconsin, and our costs are in line with the previous costs at Frontier, so I see no changes in the future. Basically, we're in pretty good shape. For this federal year, the total budget of NADP is about $2.9 million. About 50% of that is coming from the federal agencies. You can see right here. The next biggest slice, about a quarter, comes from state or city agencies, and then we have private money, other federal monies, which we can get into another time, Native American tribes, universities, other groups, and Environment Canada. So monetarily, we're in great shape, I would say. Site numbers. People always ask me this question, and here are the 4 networks that are operating. Here's NTN up at the top, and you can see going back to 1978, this tremendous rise in the number of sites. And for the most part, that has continued with slight increases in NTN. So we've got as many sites basically as we've always had. MDN, our mercury deposition, is not doing nearly as well. We had tremendous site growth up until about 2009, 2010, relatively steady period through 15. But we've lost a significant number of sites since, and we have some plans here at the program office to try to alleviate that change. Over on the AMON side, or gaseous ammonia, the story there is tremendous site growth in 3 different periods, and all we can see is more sites coming over time. Back to the gaseous AMNet network, or gaseous mercury. This is a very expensive network to run, very research-oriented. We had a lot of good growth at the earliest part, then stayed steady for a while, but we have begun to lose sites here. And so the general news is NTN and AMON on the general chemistry side doing well. On the mercury side, we're beginning to lose sites. But I want to say again, we have some processes in play at the program office to try to bring site numbers back in line with what we think we need. Just some quick sample numbers from 2019, the last full year we've counted. For NTN, we've collected 13,000 sites, 13,000 samples at 262 sites, 4,400 wet deposition mercury sites. AMON, which we'll talk a little bit about in just a second, about 55,000 gaseous observations of mercury, and 2,500, 2,600 gaseous ammonia network samples. But I will also point to you that during 2019, we had a federal shutdown between Christmas Day and about the end of January, and we lost a significant number of NTN sites or samples there. And so we'll see a little bit of impact, but I think most of those sites will still meet criteria and meet the maps, make the maps. So some specific site and network news, sort of things you can know, or things you should know. The Atmospheric Integrated Research Monitoring Network, or AMON, was closed during 2019. The last samples came off in September, and 4 sites were operating at the end of that network. And basically, it was a budgetary decision. The AMON sites were daily precipitation sites, and they were very expensive to operate. And the agencies involved just couldn't support the budgetary issue. But that network, if you're familiar at all with AMON, ran from 1992 through 2019 and up to 12 locations. It collected almost 30,000 samples. And that long period of record shown here for Pennsylvania 15 shows a steady increase in the pH of rainfall in Pennsylvania. Exactly what that network was designed to do. And so it had a wonderful lifetime, and we're all sorry to see it go. For the mercury deposition network, many of you know we moved analytical operations from Frontier Geosciences, a long-term cooperator, into the State Lab of Hygiene here in Wisconsin. We're basically fully staffed on that. That process is basically completed. One thing I did want to mention is that we're now using PETG bottles in this network. The glass funnels and glass thistles remain, but the bottles have been changed to one-use PETG bottles. We think that is an improvement from a QA perspective, and it's probably going to save us a lot of money to do that. And that is happening now. But the big news, I think, for MDN is site loss, which has primarily occurred in the West. And you can see the 2019 map has basically got lots of holes down through the Southwest and through the West, where our mapping regulations do not allow us to estimate concentration for all sites or for all locations. So without additional sites, the maps will be incomplete for the foreseeable future. I hope most of you know about this, but we've gone to bag sampling in the NTN. We're sort of following our Canadian brethren by stopping washing buckets and using basically a clean liner to collect our sample in the buckets. We think this is actually cleaner than we can get the buckets when we wash them. We think we're going to save a tremendous amount of money by doing this, because bucket washing is a very intensive operation. It takes a lot of people and a lot of dollars to fund that. It's actually occurring now. The first bag sample that I know of came off on October 8th in Minnesota. And so all of the NTN sites will be running with bags probably by the end of the year or January, something like that. So that's a big change in NTN. We've been doing it. This is different than we've done it for the last 42 years. But we think in the end, it's actually a cleaner process. I hope most of you know this, but the NADP is a monitoring cooperative, which you obviously know, but we're also a national research support project with USDA, which means that our principal job is to provide data that people use to do research with. And here is a graphic showing the publications that used NADP data in some fashion. I've been tracking this for years. And I'll just point out a few things here. During 2019, there were 17 master's theses and 16 dissertations that used our data. And that is a very important thing, that we are supporting a lot of research for graduate students, which is a wonderful thing. 14 books used our data. Lots of different agencies, federal, state, and United Nations have used our data in their reporting. And then you get into all the journal articles. A lot of the same ones over and over, year after year. Science at the total environment, atmospheric environment, environmental science and technology, on and on around here. And 93 other journals that just had one or two that I just didn't have room to list. But you can get that publication on our website. But in 2019, we had 248 science-related articles that used our data, and that is the largest number, I believe, that we ever have had. So that is a wonderful thing, and it goes right back to the idea that our job is to support scientific research, and I argue that we are doing that quite nicely. The transition, as most of you know, we transitioned from the University of Illinois to the University of Wisconsin, starting about 2.5 years ago. And I think we can say now, with the movement of the Litterfall Mercury Pilot Network, I think we can say that the migration from U of I to Wisconsin and the State Lab is now complete. All the analytical activities and the management activities for the network are occurring here at the State Lab of Hygiene. And it's a beautiful picture of the summer, and that's one of the buildings we're in. And the last time I gave this talk, which was in October 17, we were just at the beginning of the migration. And I said this in a bunch of slides, that we were moving, that our NADP's future was somewhat unsure. We had a lot of things to worry about. We had a lot of work to do. But now that I think coming back into the network after 2.5 years, I would say the NADP is in a very good place. We've got a lot of excellent employees that are working on the program. We have very good support from the State Lab of Hygiene. I can't say that enough, which is something we did not have at the university. Jamie has been very good to this program and given us lots of support financially to get the program moved and up and running correctly. I think he mentioned this morning that he might have $2 or $3 million in his pocket that he would give us just for fun. No, I'm just kidding on that one, Jamie. But I think the NADP is in a better program because of the capabilities of the laboratory that we are in. And we have a lot of very good things going. And I think of this whole transition like a spring clipping of the old growth and a lot of new growth coming back. And so I think the NADP is in an excellent position now and better in some respects than we were at U of I. So I think the last 2 years have been hard, not a whole lot of fun. We've had to spend a lot of money, but I think we're in a great position now. So I think the future looks very bright for NADP. Over the past couple of years, we've established 2 new sites here in Madison, the equivalent of Bonneville at the University of Illinois. We've got operating NTN, MDN, and AMON sites out of a place called what we call WIO6. It's on university ground at the Arboretum here in Madison. So we're actually a site operating like every other site. And we also have established a test site that we call Eagle Heights, which is also in another preserve-like area that is owned by the university, I believe, not too far from our building where we can do all the testing that we did out of Bonneville. So those 2 things are up and new. I could get rid of this. Here at the program office, we're trying a new idea, and it's really still at the trial stage. We are trying to measure total nitrogen and total phosphorus. We've heard these requests from a lot of people over the years. We have designed basically a separate sampler that looks something like this. And there's a picture of our first pilot sampler. It's a separate sampler attached to the bucket. We think we can measure total nitrogen and total phosphorus in that along with an NTN sample. We think we can analyze this very inexpensively and to measure total nitrogen, total phosphorus, and perhaps some other things at the same time. So hopefully many of you that are looking into these kinds of areas would be interested in something like that. But I must say, if, capital if this works, then it may be added as a regular NTN operation into the future. And my cohort in the planning is sitting here in the room with me. We think it's going to work. So we have grand plans in mind. So perhaps total nitrogen and total phosphorus is coming forward for wet deposition in the NTN network, but we've still got a long way to go and a lot of work to get there. For those of you that have been around as long as I have, you know, I make a big deal out of the operators that do the work, that go out every Tuesday to collect the samples. These are some of the pictures of the long-term operators we've had in the past, but I wanted to at least spotlight Jim Sigour, who works at Iowa 23, which is one of the original sites in the network. And Jim Sigour, who is still working, has collected samples for 35 years. Now that's 52 samples times 35, whatever that number is. That's a big number. That's getting close to 2,000 samples. Jim's been collecting samples since I was 1 or 2. Well, maybe not that long, but my hat is off to Jim and the other operators who make this network go. A lot of people do a lot of work to allow the research that happens, and we don't give them enough applause. So here's to you, Jim. And again, for the people that have been around NADP forever and been dealing with Belforts since the beginning, there are only 9 Belforts left in the network. 5 have been replaced this year, and NADP has purchased additional digital gauges to retire the rest of the Belforts. So for those of you that have been calling for this, it is almost happening. Give us another 8 to 10 months, and we will be an all digital precipitation network. So with all of that, I'd like to say thank you all for coming or clicking into the meeting. And from all of the staff at NADP and all the operators, we hope you enjoy the meeting, and thanks again for coming. So with that, I will turn it back over to Greg.
Great, thank you, David. So let's see, it's time for me to share my screen.
There we go.
Okay, can everyone see that? Site Operator Awards Agenda and Keynote Introduction. You can see this, right, David?
We cannot.
You cannot. Okay, let's try this.
There we go.
How about that?
Now you're good.
Great. Okay, thank you again, David. I'm going to go through the Site Operator Awards very quickly. I don't want to reproduce what David's already mentioned, but the site operators are what make it all happen for us. We don't have any data without them, and we want to make sure that everyone is recognized for their awards this year. I'll go over the agenda very briefly, and then I will introduce our keynote. So the site operators get to work in some pretty amazing places, some not so amazing, but this is Rocky Mountain National Park, which has been on fire for the last week. But this is our site up at Lock Vale, where we had a co-located site for a while for QA purposes. But this is a 3-mile hike up to close to 11,000 feet in altitude, and site operator has to do that every Tuesday to go and get that bucket of precipitation and collect the data. So there's a lot of dedicated people that do this every Tuesday morning and collect these samples for us. And so I'm not going to read all the names, but this is the list of 5-year awards. Kind of like moment of silence here. I didn't mean this to be so deep. 10-year awards. And I want to highlight Taiwan 01 Mercury site at Mount Lulin. Dr. Gurong Xu is getting a 10-year award today.
Thank you.
15-year awards and 20-year awards. I'll read the 20-year awards. Tom Bolton at Florida 41, Marty Johnson at Illinois 78. 25-year awards, Jeff Stamper, Kentucky 35, Kay Bealey at New Mexico 07, and Robert Berry at Washington 24. And then, as David indicated, Jim Sigour at Iowa 23 is getting a 35-year award today. Hats off to you, Jim. Thank you so much. And there's another picture of Iowa 23 during one of our in field on-site QA audits. I wanted to say a special thanks to David Gay and Nathaniel Javid, who's been working hard on this symposium. Bob Larson, Richard Tanabe, couldn't do without those guys. They've been fabulous. Jan Clawwitter has pitched in on this, and Jim Hermanson's been great. Melissa Buchowski has provided a lot of guidance and therapy. And I want to also recognize all the session chairs who are pitching in over the next few days. We can't do it without everybody pulling on the oars together. Thanks to everybody. Here's the agenda for today. We'll have our keynote speaker, Dr. Latoya Miles, in just a moment. And session 1 will follow emissions and deposition in a changing chemical climate. And then session 2, advances in atmospheric deposition monitoring. Session 3 will be atmospheric deposition effects in aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems. Tomorrow we'll have session 4, global atmospheric mercury assessment, followed by another mercury program, advances in mercury monitoring and research. And then the 2 concurrent sessions will be advances in measurement model fusion and critical loads of atmospheric deposition. And once again, I want to apologize for the concurrent sessions. We try to avoid this, but it was going to be a marathon Zoom meeting, and we were trying to appeal to maybe 20 different time zones in this meeting. So it was very difficult to not have a concurrent session. In the future, if you come to an NADP meeting, and I hope that you all do show up to our next NADP meeting in person, hopefully, we don't have concurrent sessions. And so this is specific to this online meeting. On Friday, we'll have our last speaker session, full-length speaker session, Atmospheric Deposition in a Changing Society, followed by a poster session. And the poster sessions are actually going to be speaking presentations. Each poster will be a 5-minute oral presentation consisting of 4 slides. So it's really going to be a rapid fire presentation session where we've segregated the poster session into 4 different subsessions. First one being on emerging contaminants and issues. Second subsession, atmospheric nitrogen and mercury assessments. The third one is atmospheric deposition modeling. And the last one will be atmospheric deposition in extreme conditions. And each subsession will be followed by a 10-minute panel discussion with all of the presenters serving as the panel.